The checkered flag in Townsville means we are now officially halfway through the 2024 Supercars Championship, and I hope that the track action we saw this weekend is a sign of things to come, because my goodness me, did we have a barnstormer of a race, especially on Saturday, and that's just one of the three main things I want to chat about today here on my Round 6 review on Fan at the Fence. We'll kick off as we always do with a recap of the race results, and on Saturday it was Cameron Waters who took a hard-fought victory over Chaz, Mostert, and Will Brown recovered from a fairly poor qualifying position to take out the final step of the podium. On Sunday though, it was Matt bringing the pain. It was Matt Payne and Grove back on the top step of the podium, Cameron Waters continuing a strong Townsville form this weekend in second, and Mostert doing the same, taking that last step on the podium. So how did all that stack up against my pre-round predictions? Well, I've got some green on the board this round, so I'll take that as a victory. It wasn't victory though for Red Bull Racing. I did actually predict them to win both the races, but that did not happen. They had a rough weekend by their very high standards and didn't really threaten the top step at any stage of the weekend. My second prediction is the one I got correct, and that's that Grove would get a podium. They went one better, obviously getting that win with Matt Payne. And my final prediction was a pile-up involving at least 4 cars in the main game, and they gave it a good crack on both the Saturday and the Sunday race starts, but managed to avoid too much calamity and certainly no track blockages, so I'm pleased to say that one didn't come true. Alright, that brings us to talking point number 1, the Saturday Stormer, as I'm calling it. What a fantastic race that was. I do love the 250-kilometer race formats because I find more often than not the strategies do tend to converge towards the back end of the races, and we often get good grandstand finishes. Not only did we pretty much have that this weekend, we had a battle that lasted more or less the entire race. It was so good to see a prolonged battle between Waters and Mostert going back and forth with the pace differing at different stages of that event. It was just fantastic, hard but very clean racing, which was great to see because these guys have managed to end each other's races more than once in the past. I think mainly through bad luck than bad blood, to be honest with you. But again, it was so good that this one could be resolved in such a clean but fair way. Speaking of keeping it clean, I've got to give a shout out to the entire field. It was a miracle, in my opinion, that we didn't see someone in the fence when that rain shower came down, just to add even more spice to what was already a great race. And in fact, that rain seemed to spread the field a little bit, and it wasn't quite the super close finish I was hoping for, but that race-long battle just made up for it so much. It was fantastic motorsport entertainment. Then let's chat about that pretty surprising victory, in my opinion, on the Sunday from Matt Payne and the Grove Racing team. It was a much tamer Sunday. I feel like a lot of the teams sort of looked at the Saturday chaos or the Saturday battles and thought, great, that was entertaining and fun, but in terms of total race time, it probably made sense to try and divert the strategies a little bit. And that's what we saw with Matt Payne. He won on the 3-stopper, similar to what we saw Anton De Pasquale do on the Sunday in Townsville last year. And my goodness me, that car just had some great pace all race long. It was an absolute rocket ship. He came up from 9 spots, I believe he came up from qualifying in the end, and it was an almost Red Bull-esque performance, if you ask me, where it seemed like no matter what his rivals were doing, you just felt like that car and that driver had so much pace and they'd overcome anything that was thrown at them. So a really great performance from them. Chad Nalon actually said on the Cooldown podcast, he pointed out quite rightly that their street circuit form is outstanding. They've had great results on all the street circuits recently, so that's maybe a sign of things to come when we get to places like Surfers Paradise and of course Adelaide to finish off the season. Then finally, I just want to chat about the different ups and downs throughout the field. In terms of downs, there's no doubt Red Bull will be leaving this weekend a little bit disappointed. Again, even if this is an off weekend for them, it's not all bad news. It wasn't a complete disaster, but I was very surprised, I think, like a lot of us, that they did have such a strong weekend. There's a little bit of murmurs about the tyre batch as well. That's maybe partly responsible for their poor showing, but nevertheless there was some unfortunate moments in the races as well that certainly cost them on top of that. So the championship has certainly closed up on the drivers front, with Chaz Mostert in particular making a bit of a step towards the 2 Red Bull drivers. Red Bull can afford an off weekend like this, I think, at this stage of the season. They've built out quite a margin, but yeah, they certainly can't have too many more off weekends if the other teams start finding more consistency. As for the other names, I want to give a shout out to Thomas Randall. He's being a bit missing in action throughout most of this year so far. So while he didn't get a podium in the end, it was fantastic to at least see him in the picture and showing much stronger form than we've seen from him recently. Erebus, I think, have reasons to be optimistic as well. Their weekend wasn't without drama. Brody Kostecki was battling steering rack gremlins right from the start, and Jack LeBrock, despite getting pole, had a horrendous race start on the Sunday. But I get the feeling that team's starting to rediscover their form, and with Brody Kostecki almost certain to go elsewhere next year, it's also good to see that Jack LeBrock's starting to get some good results, at least in quali. Dang it, DJR, I feel like they have reasons to be optimistic as well. Will Davison in particular seems to be really finding his quali speed again, so good to see him up towards the front, but they've still got a lot of work to do in the race, it would seem. And then finally, I think BJR had a fairly good weekend. These guys have felt like they've just been completely lost at the back of the grid for a while now, and while it's very up and down through most of the grid, it just feels like Brad Jones Racing have been the bookmarks at the end of the grid for far too long now. And this weekend, they seem to find a little bit of progress, particularly on the side of the garage with Fullwood and Heimgartner. They were more or less in the mix in the mid-pack this weekend, so that was good to see, and fingers crossed whatever they've discovered they can start carrying forward to future events. Thank you as always to those of you who left some discussion points for me to delve into. The first one here from Curry Pie saying both of the races had a great action, but it was the first one that was just so much fun to watch. And yeah, I agree, it was almost set the bar too high. I couldn't help but feel a slight bit of disappointment with the lack of action, relatively speaking, on the Sunday, but of course it was good to get a different race winner. I would have actually liked to see some safety cars on the Sunday just to make that race feel a bit more distinct from the first, but that's motorsport, it goes the way it goes. The second comment here from Mabini, I want to delve into the second half of this one, which is why the heck were they running super soft tires instead of hards is beyond me. The rubber buildup was as bad as Adelaide last year. It's like they don't know what tires to use. A few things to delve into here. It does feel strange when we're running super soft tires at these more longer form endurance style events. That is strange. The racing I still think was pretty darn good despite that. However, the rubber buildup was definitely a problem towards the back end of things. And on the topic of supercars seeming like they don't know what tires to use, I feel like it's a pretty accurate reflection of the situation. We have seen a lot of toing and throwing with the rubber compounds for multiple events, even Bathurst last year, and I think that just represents that these tires are no longer fit for purpose. We know they weren't updated with Gen 3. These are still the old spec tires from the previous generation of supercars, and I feel like the series is really feeling the negative aspect of that decision. So the good news is we do have an improvement coming, hopefully for next year, with just a single compound by the sounds of things likely to be in use. It sounds like it's got the more durability of a hard, but hopefully the pace of a soft. So fingers crossed that's a sweet spot, and then it doesn't generate too many marbles either. And then the final one here from Mark saying it was okay, but the SVG Xfinity Chicago highlights was awesome. And yes, I must admit I haven't been following SVG's exploits in America too closely, watching any of the races or anything, just a lack of time really, but I tuned in for the Chicago action. I really enjoyed watching that last year, and this year was no different, especially in the Xfinity series. It was a fantastic race, a bit like Saturday in Supercars. It was a barnstormer. It just went back and forth for so long, which is always fantastic. Unfortunately, the cup race for SVG didn't turn out so good though. In terms of my overall weekend rating, I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5 stars. I thought we were trucking to a perfect score after Saturday's action, but as I said, Sunday was a little tamer than I was hoping for. Still a very positive weekend overall, and a lot of you guys feel the same. The vast majority of people just went for 4 stars, 48%, very closely followed by a series of 5-star poll results, 41% of you going for that one. So overall, I think a very positive weekend, and it helps the championship picture as well if you're a neutral. As I said, Chaz Mostert has closed up towards the championship leader, Will Brown. Brock Feeney, I believe, has made some steps there as well, so it is starting to close up, but as I said, we're really relying on people like Mostert in particular and WAU to keep this consistency going if they're going to play a role in the championship in the back half of the year. On the team side of things, it's still pretty locked in though. Red Bull have that clear advantage over WAU in second and Tickford in third. That will bring my Townsville review to a close though, and the best bit is we don't have long to wait to the next one, something we rarely get to say in Supercars, but in just 2 weeks time we will be racing under lights at Sydney Motorsport Park. Very much looking forward to that one. And if you want to check out my round preview and review for that action, be sure to like and subscribe so you get notified when I drop the next video. In the meantime, treat people like your trackside down there in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.